Genesis's abandoned mansion. Our exploration today takes us to the Western Isles of Scotland, where some of the most beautiful landscapes of the British Isles are situated. It is deep within these lands where lies a mansion with links not only to a famous and influential rock band, but also to the MacGillivray clan of Scotland. The name of the house means Penny Land of the Gael, referring to the old value of property in silver pennies. The land it stands on was settled by King Calla de Creach and 350 clan chiefs from the north of Ireland in 327 AD, one of which may have been Clan MacGillivray. Later, a Gaelic Norse dynasty led by Somerled, the Lord of the Isles, ruled these lands through the MacLeans of Duart. By 1493, this supremacy was broken when the MacDonald Lords of the Isles were defeated. The lands were then held from the Crown of Scotland and by its laird, an Archibald MacGillivray, in 1542. The mansion's lands then passed through the family and its lairds, during which a smaller original house stood there. Eventually, on the passing of Laird Alexander MacGillivray, the house was inherited by a Dr. Alexander MacLean, who replaced the building with the core of what would become the current mansion. In time, John Campbell, the 5th Duke of Argyll, would come to hold much of its related lands, and by 1798, the descendants of its owner, Sir Alan MacLean, chief of Clan MacLean, went bankrupt, selling most of their remaining lands. Finally, in 1819, Archibald MacLean sold the house and lands to William MacGillivray of Montreal, Canada. It was William who was to build the modern 2-story, 7-window bay house. William, originally born in Inverness, was related to Captain William MacGillivray, the chief of the clan. He later emigrated to Canada in 1784 to work for the North West Company and his uncle Simon McTavish, who had visited his family and paid for his education. Working as a clerk, he traveled to Ile-à-la-Crosse, Saskatchewan, and Snake Lake, where he set up a trading post. He then traded at Rat River and eventually bought a company share in 1790. During this time, his uncle became a leading figure in the Northwest Company, and William eventually became a partner in the controlling firm in 1798. When William's uncle died in 1804, he took control of the company. Elsewhere, William was also busy and in 1804 had been made a Justice of the Peace in Quebec, and in 1808 he joined the Legislative Assembly of Lower Canada. During the War of 1812, he gained the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the Corps of Canadian Voyageurs, and by 1814 he was elected to the Legislative Council of Lower Canada. Despite these life successes, soon trouble was brewing with the company, as rising costs and a drop in profits were seen from competition with John Jacob Astor and the Hudson Bay Company. Eventually, the rivalry between the two companies came to a head within the War of 1812, where the Americans destroyed the trading post of Sault Ste. Marie. Also that year, Lord Selkirk, a member of the Hudson Bay Company, established the Red River Colony, which actively worked against the Northwest Company. Miles MacDonald, governor of the colony, then declared war on them, which ended in the Battle of Sevenoaks, where some 20 settlers were killed by the Northwest Company men, led by Cuthbert Grant. Lord Selkirk then arrested William and seized Fort William and its furs. While cleared of wrongdoing, William was forced to accept a merger with the now more powerful Hudson Bay Company, and his brother Simon carried out these changes. William's post-war years were spent in government and at his significant estates in Quebec. These included Chateau Saint-Antoine on the outskirts of Montreal, where he was to later host guests like his old rival John Jacob Astor and the English geologist John Jeremiah Bigsby. After his defeats and losses to the Hudson Bay Company, he finally decided to start his life anew in England, but sadly died during the trip in 1825, just 6 years after purchasing the mansion he was to live in, but never did. 2 of William's daughters, however, were to take up residence there for some time, though by the 1840s the house reverted to ownership of the MacLeans. They in turn sold it on to the Robertsons and then the Pettigrews, who added 2 wings to the house, expanding it to a 9-bedroom mansion. The house was then sold again to the Flowers, who held it until 1986, when it was purchased by the rock band Genesis. At the time, the band was working on their most successful album, Invisible Touch, which went on to sell 7.2 million copies in the UK and US, with a record 5 singles in the Billboard Hot 100. Sadly, due to a last-minute heritage designation, the band was unable to easily make repairs or improvements to the mansion. It was then marketed for sale in the 1990s by the band, who planned to partly demolish it. It was finally bought by developers and has sat empty ever since, rotting slowly away deep in the Scottish countryside. Let's take a look at what remains of the mansion. Down an overgrown road with traces of pavement, through bushes and overfallen trees, eventually the house appears in view. It's quickly apparent that one of the later edition wings has collapsed, creating a pile of roofing, beams, and doors in the interior. A view of the back shows other holes in the roof. We walk around the front towards more intact areas. The door is boarded, but a view of the old interiors is possible through a broken window. Both doorways to this section are blocked with fallen rubble. If you look long enough, you can almost imagine the way it once was. Around the side lies a partly covered well opening. A back door gives access to this wing, which has fared better than the other. The floors are rotten through with large holes and will not support a person. This wing was once the kitchen, and much of it is still intact. While from the front the house seems mostly complete, it is quickly deteriorating into a collapsed pile. It will not be long before this house is only a shell and beyond any restoration. We leave the house and its storied past as we continue across Scotland. Join us next time as we explore a massive abandoned mansion and its haunting tale. Until then.